Violence against Nigerian communities has been reported across multiple regions, sometimes leading commentators to describe it as a state-backed genocide against a religious group. However, it is important to clarify what the term genocide actually means. In both dictionary usage and international law, specifically the 1948 UN Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, it refers to deliberate acts committed with the intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. Crucially, genocide is not simply mass killing or widespread violence. It requires provable, specific intent to eliminate a protected group. Many who invoke the term disregard these legal thresholds, but without meeting them, the label cannot be established under international law. Similar claims have circulated in South Africa, where some argue that Afrikaners face systemic persecution. Both stories traveled beyond their countries of origin, picked up by foreign commentators and political figures, demonstrating how a single narrative can become powerful once it enters the global information space. However, the reality is far more complex in both instances. What reaches global audience is often incomplete, selective, or simplified. This is where foreign information manipulation and interference, FIMI, comes in. FIMI distorts perceptions, reduces multifaceted crises into a single simplistic story. But what exactly is FIMI? How does it work? And why has Nigeria become entangled in this narrative? Let's break this down. FIMI, at its core, occurs when external actors such as governments, media outlets, or outsourced networks intentionally craft or amplify information to shift public opinion, distort events, or influence decisions. However, before foreign amplification, the narrative already existed locally. FIMI does not invent polarization. It exploits already existing divisions. Hence, Nigeria's deep ethno-religious tensions provided fertile ground for external actors to amplify and weaponize a local narrative, such as the issue of the Christian genocide. This pattern, as I mentioned earlier, isn't unique to Nigeria. In South Africa, activists and commentators have pushed the claim of a white genocide against Afrikaners, despite evidence to the contrary. Once again, foreign state and non-state actors amplified a narrative that resonated abroad but misinterpreted the local realities. Pro-Russian FIMI has also been active across Africa. During Nigeria's End Bad Governance protest in August 2024, some protesters were seen waving Russian flags and demanding that the military take over the country's governance. Investigations showed that the brandishing of the flags was linked to pro-Russian messages circulating online, especially on TikTok, Telegram, and Facebook. Similar scenes played out in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger just before the coups. Russian-linked networks have also been accused of spreading pro-Kremlin and anti-Western narratives via radio broadcasts and social media, positioning themselves as the best ally against other colonial influences. All these cases are examples of how FIMI thrives on already existing divisions locally. This brings us back to Nigeria's security landscape, which is far too complex to fit into a single religious narrative. In the northeast, there is the Boko Haram insurgency and the activities of other terror groups that extend into the northwest. In central Nigeria and parts of the north, there are violent farmer-herder conflicts, terrorism, and disturbances by local militias. Down south, violence is mostly driven by secessionist groups such as IPOB. Hence, framing the entire violence as targeting only one group ignores the complex mix of reasons behind the attacks and deepens divisions, while issues like lack of governance and justice, competition for resources, and insecurity are overlooked. FIMI spreads because it relies on emotionally charged techniques. Once you have a dramatic claim with inflated numbers and authoritative local and foreign voices, you have a perfect FIMI recipe. It starts with a story. It could be a broadcast or a social media post. Then, amplification kicks in. Social media accounts, including bots, sympathetic influencers, and even diaspora channels, make the story go viral. The Oxford Internet Institute tracked such campaigns in 81 countries, and they found that bots and fake human-run accounts were often used to drive information manipulation. Since most of the foreign audience lacks local context, everything becomes believable, whether it's false or just an inflated reality. When these narratives reach foreign policymakers, they have consequences. For instance, following the recent Christian genocide narrative, Nigeria's foreign bonds dropped as investors worried about instability. At home, such stories weaken trust in institutions and also deepen existing polarization between communities. The truth is, armed violence exists in Nigeria, but with FIMI, the story is told in a way that serves an agenda. With over 150 million active internet users in the country, the question becomes, how can Nigerians recognize FIMI before it exploits existing fault lines? First, pause before sharing information. Ask, who is making this claim and why? Where did the numbers come from? Are local credible sources confirming it? This simple pause helps prevent unintentional participation in a disinformation campaign. Second, investment in digital, media, and information literacy training. Understanding how bots, algorithms, and repetition shape what people believe is essential for building resilience against manipulation. Finally, the government and local media organizations must communicate proactively. They should provide timely, accurate information about violence, victims, and displacement, closing the information gaps that foreign narratives often exploit. Because if those gaps are not filled locally, they will be filled by someone else. And when external actors shape how our pain and failures are portrayed, we lose control of our own story and overlook the real problems and those truly responsible. Importantly, when justice is delayed or absent, communities are left without answers, and that vacuum makes almost any explanation, no matter how distorted, feel believable. Impunity does not merely fuel resentment. It creates the perfect conditions for manipulated narratives to take root. Nigeria's insecurity must be addressed. We must hold our leaders accountable for the many ways lives are lost through armed violence and struggles over resources. Equally, we must reclaim our stories and refuse to let manipulated narratives dictate our future.